everyone, welcome back to my channel, Sharon Cullen Art. Today we are going to be doing another request, and this one is for stones or rocks. I'm going to be doing something called a Cairn. I think that's how it's pronounced, Cairn. If anybody's from Scotland, you can correct me. And it looks like this. Stacks of rocks. You've seen them here. The cairns in Scotland are very large. They're more like towers, and they're like circles of rocks that go up. But you see these too, these small ones. So this is a painting I did the other day from a photograph. I believe I found it on Unsplash, or maybe I ended up finding it on Google. That's what it was, because I couldn't find anything good on Unsplash. It was just, you know, so they were great photographs, but not great painting photographs, if you know what I mean. So we're going to do this, and I may change up one of the rocks and add some green in. I've been dying to use my Cascade green a little bit more. And for those of you who do not have Cascade green, you can mix a little bit of phthalo blue and some raw sienna together, or whatever. You'll still get a granulation effect. Some people say you won't, but I tried it, and you will get granulation. It just depends on the proportions you're using and how wet your paper is. So I'll get into that in a bit too. I got some really bad news today. You guys know how I have this chronic cough, and I was diagnosed recently with this genetic lung disease called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, which basically just means that my body is lacking a protein that lines the lungs that helps to fight off infection. Well, this chronic cough that I've had, it took me several tries to get the results of the test, because I had to do one of those cultures, you know, spit into the cup and all that. And I finally got it back. And I have something called NTM, which is non-tuberculosis mycobacterium. It is Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which is a very, very strong bacteria. Unfortunately, it is not something that I think I'll ever be rid of. It's going to be something I'm going to chronically fight, and it's going to slowly destroy my lungs, which is a tad depressing, you know. I'll get used to it. I can get used to it. It's just going to take me a little bit. But anyway, each blow that I get, I'll get over with God's help, you know. So if any of you out there are prayers, I could use some prayers right about now. My sister-in-law is going through hell herself. She's far worse off than me. She has pulmonary fibrosis and not doing well at all. So she's 12 years older than me, and 11 or 12, I forget. But anyway, you know, we all got to die of something, right? And this can cause some pulmonary fibrosis in me. Pulmonary fibrosis is a progressive lung disease that the only cure is a lung transplant, basically. COPD is another problem that occurs, especially with my alpha-1 and my asthma. So anyway, it's been kind of a blow. I'm waiting on a call from my doctor. I hope it comes in very soon. The other problem is my embryol. They say that this happens a lot too in people who have suppressed immune systems, which I do. And I lost my train of thought. Oh, the Embryl that I take, my Embryl injections, are something that can also contribute to this. And I'm hoping I won't have to go off of my Embryl, because if they make me go off my Embryl, we know what's going to happen. My pain's going to go through the roof again. And I only had about 2 hours of sleep last night, and it was a rough night. So I need to do a little bit of painting to get myself together again and not think about this, because every time I think about it, one of my biggest fears for a long time was suffocation, you know, and I think about all those people with COVID and how much hell they go through. But I've had a bad asthma attack before where I've passed out because I couldn't breathe anymore. And my husband was rushing me down the road to get me help. And I got to the point where I was saying in my head, it's okay, Sharon, just stop breathing for a minute. You can take a rest and then start up again. Whose brain tells you to do that, right? I mean, really. And that's what I did. And it felt good to stop. So I'm hoping that if I get to that point again, it'll just be quick and I'll be done. So I'm trying to keep a positive attitude. There's always new technology and new medications and things. So that's what I need, is another flippin' pill and another biologic, because I know they're going to want to put me on the lung biologic now. So I'd have one. They want me on the one for migraines. They want me on the one for my ankylosing spondylitis. They want me on the one for asthma. I'm like, you guys put me on all of these, I'm going to end up with lymphoma and die, you know? So I don't know. Where do you draw the line, right? Oh, gosh. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And I appreciate it in advance, all of you who will say some prayers for me. Thank you so much. Oh, and one other thing is, I don't know if you can hear the banging outside. They have finally started my roof. They tore my deck off, and they are building the new deck on the back of our house. I don't know if you can see back over there. I got screens in my windows, so it's hard for me to show you, but the deck is going on. They built it out another 6 feet or so. It's going to be beautiful. That was done today. It's so funny because you wait so long for stuff to get done. We have been trying since March, like I said, to get concrete done outside our walkout so that we can put a hot tub in, to get concrete done off the side entrance of our garage, to get the back deck redone, screened in porch, so that we could enjoy the summer this summer without the mosquitoes killing us. And we ended up putting up a screen tent in our driveway so that we could sit outside. It was ridiculous. And then getting our roof done, which was 30 years old. We needed to get our roof done, you know, and we're putting a metal roof on to match my studio. So our house is going to look like Lincoln Logs. But anyway, they came to start working yesterday. We were notified before we got out of bed, and they were here like within a couple hours. And then all of a sudden today, the plumber came to do our plumbing for our sprinkler system. So now we got to call them to tell them to quick come out and do our sprinkler system and hydro seed our lawn before frost. And yeah, so, and we're at peak color right now. I don't know if you saw that. Look how gorgeous it is getting outside. It is just beautiful. There's not a lot of red over here. There's a little up in the trees, but it's funny how my camera doesn't want to pick up red. But yeah, it's really pretty outside. And of course my view out my windows is beautiful too. You can see how gorgeous it is out there. Makes it hard to get any work done. Okay, let's get started. Now I'm going to be using several colors. I may change maybe this upper rock I might do in a green color, so that we can add a little more in. And I may add a little more blue into this gray area. I don't know. I might just take some liberties. This I did just like the photo with the sunset and the water and everything. And these rocks were actually, they were perfectly arranged. They didn't look like they were arranged, but here they look like they're perfectly arranged. So it's kind of funny. But let me pull up the photo here and see if I can find it. I don't know if I saved it or not. I had all of these cool photos I found. I liked this one too. This one I thought was really cute. I'm sorry, I got to get rid of the light here. Turn it off for a minute. There we go. Oh, I really liked this. Let me turn my brightness is up. I thought this was really cute. There were several that I took for just different references. This one was also beautiful. Had a lot of green in it, a lot of interesting rock formation. And you can go and find these yourself. I loved the moss on these rocks here, but I want to keep it somewhat simple. This one was pretty too, in the sand. There were all sorts of them. This is the one that I used. But that's weird. That looks like it's a print of something. That isn't what I was looking at. I had a much clearer picture than that. Let me see if I can find it. I guess not. I guess I used that one. So that's what we're going to use today. And I'm going to go ahead and draw it. Now here, you can see, it doesn't matter if it's not exact, you know, because nobody's going to see your work. So it really doesn't matter. These were so perfectly shaped. Like this one, I changed a little bit. But if you look at this, there's a little bitty bit of white, a little air gap there that I left. And I could have raised that rock up, and I might do it this time so that we get that. And then I added scarring in. There was a little scarring here. I decided to add a scar in here. So I will show you how I do that as well. So let me go ahead and draw this on, and you guys can go ahead and draw this on yourselves, and we'll just go from there. Okay, so I've got my picture drawn in, and I'm just going to erase some of the sketchy lines that I have here so that they don't show through. I did leave a little extra space here, like I made it almost bean-shaped, which it is. Let's see, then the water in that photo looks like it's almost split in half, but we don't want to split our photos in half, so I'm going to take it on this midpoint here. That's going to be my water line. Oops, doesn't look straight. Let me get a ruler. That'll be easier. You just got to make sure your ruler is straight on the paper so you don't mess that up and go downhill, but I just don't want to do that. When I do that, I try to line it up with the edge of the paper, but let's see here. I'm just gonna, I think that's kind of straight. I'll do it very lightly and check it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so, and then up at the top, you'll be leaving a little spot for the sun, and that will be it. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab some colors. Now with these colors, the colors I'd like to use today are raw sienna, burnt sienna maybe, and a little bit of raw umber, or I have greenish raw umber somewhere. Where did I put that? I want my yellow ochre, and set this aside here. Where my greenish raw umber went to. That's very weird. And I want some red. I'm gonna go with some, I don't know if I want the, I think I want the vermilion because it's really an orangey kind of a red rock. My green, I wanted to go with Cascade Green. Where did I put that? That's my new color. It must be this one because it's so neat and pretty. Yep, that's it. No mess up the sides yet. And then some Payne's Gray. I'm going to use Payne's Blue Gray. And I think I also want to use some of my Hematite Burnt Scarlet. I'm just grabbing different colors. You don't have to use all of these. Where is my blue gray? And I had to make room for my new green to go in because I ran out of spots in my big slots. So, oh, and those of you who are not familiar, I always get questions about this. If you go back, you can see this is my palette. It's got all my colors in it. These spaces are the ones that I just took out over here. And I do have an extra one of these, I think. Oh, no, I don't. It's just like a palette that I can put them all in. And I should get another one of these because I do take my colors out frequently, and I could use one of these to put my colors in so that I have a spot right there. The only thing I have here is a lid and one of these. That is it. I have 2 videos on my palette, on my Robax palette. Robax.com is where you can go. They have different types. You just have to study them and find what's right for you. Here, I wanted to grab some phthalo green because, and I can't find my, oh, this is it, greenish raw umber. Why is it over there? It should be over here. And what did I put in there? Not sure. And I want my moon glow. My moon glow should be right here. Yes. Okay, so I've got a trillion colors out here. I'm going to go along as I go and tell you exactly what I'm using, because what I do is I lay some color down, wet into wet. Then I might use a little bit of salt to lift some color and make some of the speckles like I made over here. Those are speckles made by salt. You can also, if you have non-staining colors, you can go ahead and splatter water down, and that will also work to make the spots. But I like using the salt because I get really good control over what I'm doing with that. I'm just going to take all of these, yellow ochre, raw sienna, burnt sienna, German green romber, whatever, my hematite scarlet, Payne's gray, moon glow, greens, and my red. There. So I've got all my colors here, and I can just set them here out of the way. I should have cleaned off my desk first. Okay. And for those of you who do not follow me on Instagram, I have been putting up some of my more recent paintings that you don't see here on my from my journal and that kind of thing. You can go over there and check them out. Oh, you may want white too. I like to use my bleed-proof white ink. It's getting pretty dry though. Or you can use white gouache or whatever. There's a little white dot on this rock, and I put that on there yesterday. I think that was the only place I added any white. Oh, right here I added a little white because I couldn't lift the color. But if you get it while it's wet, you can. So now what I'm going to do is start with some yellow ochre, and I'm just going to put this on the top. And I forgot, I should have sprayed all of my colors. Of course, this is going to get empty now. There we go. You tip it, and then you lose your squirt. There. Okay. Got to get those activated. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down. Make it nice and juicy wet. You don't want to make it too wet. You know what I mean. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I don't want to go too far and lose you guys. I know I do that, so I apologize. And if this video is a little bit out there, I'm sorry. I'm going to take a little raw sienna here, put this on the bottom portion to just kind of mix these together, make them meet. We'll be adding in shadowing and that kind of thing, but I wanted to get some extra color in. There's also a little bit of red in here that could be splattered in later, orangey red, or some burnt sienna. I don't want to splatter all over my paper though, so there's a little bit of a line here of like this dark color, and that's what I'm adding in. It's going to spread out a little bit, but that's okay. This isn't very concentrated. There we go. I'll probably have to go back in and do more, which is fine. I went outside my line here, and I don't like to do that. But if you do that, just make your rock a little bit larger, make it disappear. Not a big deal. Who's going to know, right? So we're done with that for now, but I want to add a little bit of salt. Try to keep your salt off of your other rocks so that you can continue to work. There we go. And I'm going to also, I should have done this beforehand, I'm going to grab some of my moon glow. to go in on the bottom a little bit and put in some shadowing. This goes all the way up to the point of that other rock right there. It also comes along here. This whole area. There we go. Now, I'm going to skip this rock and go to this center rock. I'm going to start by going in with some yellow ochre, although I believe raw sienna would work better for this, and I think I go back in later at the end of the video and put some raw sienna over it. So you may want to go ahead and do that now. This ends up a little bit bright. I guess it just depends on how bright you want it. It's kind of scattered all over. You can do whatever you want. I apologize for the noise, by the way. They're working on the roof of my house, and it's going to get very noisy while I'm doing this voiceover, so I apologize. Right now I'm going in with my Payne's Gray. I'm using a little bit of Payne's Blue Gray, as I said before. That's by Daniel Smith. So if you have a blue tinge to your gray, it may add a little greenish color when it mixes with this yellow ochre or raw sienna, whichever you're using. And that's fine. Just let it go. And then when we're done with this, we're going to go ahead and sprinkle salt on this as well. And don't be afraid to add color. I think I keep it a little bit too light here, if I remember correctly. And later I have to go in and add more color over it. So if you start out with a little more color, then your salt is going to have a more dramatic effect on your rock. Now I had to speed this video up because it's very long. But I go ahead and add a little more of that Payne's Blue Gray to the top and bottom for a little bit of shadowing. But I also added in some burnt sienna dots here and there. And I don't splatter my dots because it's such a closed-in area that it makes it very hard to control, although splattering is much prettier if you can control it. Now on this rock, the second from the top, I go in with that vermilion color, and I'm going over it with either some burnt sienna or some hematite burnt scarlet. I believe I went in with hematite burnt scarlet. Another thing you can use is your moon glow, which is going to give it a darker effect. And you want to have some darkness here and there. And I added in also some white with my ink. Now you can see how the salt worked on that gray rock. It worked very well. The green rock, I'm going in with some of my Cascade Green, and then I'm going in some other areas with the Phthalo Green. I was just showing you my brush there. Somebody had asked about it the other day. That is called a needle brush, and it was by Neef, N-E-E-F, Alvaro Castanier's line of brushes, and you can get those on Amazon. I added salt to this as well. Now we're just letting them dry, and then we can go into the other rock down below. Now for this next rock, I'm just going in with some of my vermilion, and I'm adding a little bit of burnt sienna to it to deepen that red a little bit so that it's not so bright. I'm just going to cover the entire rock with that color. And remembering to leave a little white space at the bottom there of the rock. Once you have that all completed, go in with a little bit of your darker brown color, whatever you want, or moon glow would also work very well for this. Keep your rock a little on the wetter side if you're adding salt. But here I've sprinkled a little water down as well, just to show you that you can do that also. But I prefer using the salt because I like a more dramatic effect. While those rocks are drying, I'm just going back in and I'm painting the small rocks on the bottom, adding a little green to this one here just for a different look. It had a little green on it, but I also left a little white space, as you see, on that third rock over to the right. And that will stay white with a reflection later on. And I splattered a little more water on this red rock here, and it ended up splattering some of the paint off to the right. It splashed it. So I decided to use salt instead and added a little more Payne's Gray to the rock on top just to deepen it a little bit more. And now we need to let those go ahead and dry for a little while. I grabbed some raw umber there to put on the bottom of the rock, on that bottom rock. And I'm now using Moon Glow and putting the shadowing in between the rocks there. If you're not using Moon Glow, just use whatever you normally use to shadow colors, ultramarine blue, whatever, doesn't matter. Now I let those dry, but I always, before I go in to dust my salt off of anything, I use my dryer, my heat gun, just to make sure that that's dry. And I am not drying that red rock down below. I'm letting that dry on its own. You cannot dry salt with a dryer, or you're not going to have the absorption effect that you need in order to make the white spots on your paper. And I was just using a stiff brush to brush the salt off because I had lotion on my hands. Now grab a small brush like the one I just showed you, which was like a size 0 or 2. It's a synthetic brush that's stiff. And I'm sorry I'm off the page a little bit. I will move this in just a second. But all I'm doing is taking a wet brush and trying to lift a line out of the paper here to make the scarring on the stone. I'm just going to rub back and forth, and then I use a paper towel to lift that color out. See what I did there? And that makes the scar on the stone. Now, depending on which direction your light is coming from, you would want to add in some color for shadowing. Technically, the sun is coming from in front of those rocks, so there wouldn't be much shadowing, but with the ambient light that you get around a stone, you're still going to see some shadowing. So I'm taking some Moon Glow. Well, first I'm doing another one on this rock, just a small one, and I'm just dabbing that because it's still wet and I don't want to lift that salt up. And then I'm going to go in with some Moon Glow and put a little shadow on the edge of that scar. Now I'm just softening the edge there with a little bit of water, a wet brush, because that Moon Glow is a little stark in contrast. Got a little bit dark. You can see here on this one. Now here on the green, I'm adding a little bit of Payne's Gray, and I just thought the green got a little bit too bright. It really didn't matter though. I did lose some of the salt effect because I did that. So just keep that in mind. You can decide what you would prefer to do on your stone. Now I'm going in here and I'm adding some shadowing with some Moon Glow. And I need to finish off the shadowing down below on the red stone as well. So I will do that, keeping in mind that white area that's there on the underside of the stone. I don't want to lose that. And then there's a little area, when I get down to the beige stone below it, there's a line that comes across. It's very faint. It's really unnecessary, but I get a little bit, what's the word I want to use? I don't want to say anal, but I guess it's the word I'm going to use in putting that in there, and it's really unnecessary. But you'll see here what I'm doing. I'm putting this on both sides, and then I'm putting a line across the center very, very thinly, because that light shows through and then leaves one little bitty line there. So don't worry about that. Now I'm just going to soften the edges on some of those shadows because they were a little bit too stark for my liking. I want them to be more of a gradual change. Now here's where I decide to go in with the raw sienna because I don't like how light that yellow ochre is, and see the difference it made. And then I put a little bit of Payne's gray around it, and I was worried about the edges on that, but looking at this here, I wish I would have left them because the edge made it look like there was a gouge in the rock, which was really cool. Now I'm removing the salt off of the red rock, and I'm just going to start here on the background. You can set your other colors aside, and now I'm going to have some Hansa Yellow Light. I'll also use a little bit of my Hansa Yellow Deep, some Quinacridone Rose, and Ultramarine Blue. And I will keep out a little bit of my Payne's Gray to mix in with my Ultramarine Blue for the water. But here I want to test out a theory because there's a shadow on the sand, and I decide that I like my Rose of Ultramarine to do that shadow. I was considering Moon Glow. You might want to use a little of the pink color that you have to put that on there, and if it's too bright, use a little bit of your Ultramarine Blue mixed in. Also, when I put that sand in, you see I left that white area on that one stone. Now here I'm mixing a little bit of Payne's Gray in with my Ultramarine Blue, and I'm putting this all in for the water, and then I'm going to bring it down a little bit onto the sand so that we don't have perfectly straight lines there. And then I'm going to take a little of that Hansa Yellow Light and also mix in a little bit of my Hansa Yellow Deep with it, and put some yellow in across the water because there's a reflection of the sun on the water on that side. Now here I'm going to grab some of my Hansa Yellow Light, and I'm leaving a white circle in the center. I'm just going to go around the area where my sun would be, up at the top corner there, and then I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow throughout the middle, streaking. You can see on the other painting that I did how I put the yellow through the center there. I don't know about you, but every time I do a sky, they turn out different. I really like the way my first one turned out better than this one, but it still turned out pretty good. Now, when you start to put down your Ultramarine Blue, which I'm going to do in a minute, you may want to wet your paper first. It's easier to do a sunset if you wet the paper first. I didn't do it on the first one. I didn't do it on this one, but Ultramarine Blue stains so quickly that I start to have a staining issue. But I fix it later by adding the pink in and more Ultramarine Blue and making it more of a lavender anyway. The blue is not really going to stay. You're going to add pink to it, and it's going to kind of become lavender in those areas anyway. But it took me a little bit to get that stark line off. See right here where I'm putting this blue in? I go and do it in another area right here, and in the meantime that is staining, and on a dry paper it will stain immediately. So now I go back with my pink trying to hurry, and I find that it's already too late. Now watch as I come down, you'll see that I've already stained. See, it doesn't even mix. So what I do there is I have to get it more wet. I add more blue, I add more pink, and gradually I am able to make that disappear. I'm trying to scrub it out on the right-hand side as well, and I have the same problem. And it looks pretty dramatic close up. I'll show you here. But now I'm adding in a lot of pink, which also will stain quickly. So I'm grabbing some water, and now I'm just going to kind of move that paint around, and gradually I'll be adding more Ultramarine Blue into that in order to get rid of those lines. There are always ways to fix a sky. You can go over it again, and then I don't want to bring my blue up to those old lines, because then I'll have lines meeting lines with the new color. So gradually I'm going to go over all of it. And I'm not panicking, I'm just working with it nice and easy and gradually adding that blue in and bringing it together. Adding some of these lines in also gives the illusion of more clouds in the sky, which is what I'm doing here. And that way the blue lines that were left from before look like they're meant to be there on purpose. I've been told many times by subscribers that you like to see my mistakes. Well, we all make mistakes. Now, granted, there are some terrific artists out there who rarely make mistakes, or if they do, they're not letting you know that they're making them as they make them. They just fix them without bringing notice to them at all. But I feel like, especially for beginners, I needed somebody to show me how to correct mistakes. I did take a class once that taught me some of that, but a lot of it I had to learn by trial and error. So that's why I want to explain to you how I'm fixing these. And then sometimes I just get a little too fussy because I get so particular about it that I want to keep fussing with it and fussing with it. And sometimes you just have to leave well enough alone. Now here, if you have Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White ink, that is what I'm using. You can also use white gouache. I'm going to try to go in and tap a little with my brush, but it is so hard to control that small an area. I suppose if I cut out a piece of paper in the shape of the stones, which is something that you could do, then you can go ahead and place that over your paper and you'll be perfectly fine. But what I end up doing is I go in and I start dotting with the white, which is going to leave little polka dots all over my paper. So what I suggest you do, if you don't want to tap like I'm trying to do here, wet your rock a little bit first and then drop the white into your wet rock. If you've got a lot of white spots from your salt already, then don't bother with this step. I just lost some of my white like I had over there. You can see it on the right-hand side. And I apologize, it gets a little blurry as I'm zooming in because my camera is focused on where I'm working. But then back over to the other side, you can see what not having a wet paper does to your rock. I have polka dots. But that's okay because I get rid of them by putting a little water on there and it smooths it all out after the fact. The salt, had I not added more paint to my red rock to begin with, I would have been fine. Also, though, the day before, I didn't realize this until after I finished my painting, I believe I used either red iron oxide or an English red or something like that, which is non-staining, to paint that rock on the right. Even though they look very similar in color, I did it by mixing a paint rather than just using one single pigment that I had used the day before. And that's why my salt took such a dramatic effect there than it did on the left-hand side. That and the fact that I was adding moon glow to it while it was still wet and there was salt still on the paper, which then took some of the effect away also. You gotta leave it alone when you have salt on that paper. You just have to leave it alone and not do anything to it until it's dry. Now don't forget to sign your work. Go ahead and sign that so that you have your signature on it. And that's pretty much it, you guys. I kind of thought, I liked the way the first one turned out better. I hate redoing paintings because that's usually what happens. I start comparing them to each other. Every time you do a painting, it's not going to turn out the same. That's just the way it goes for all of us. Somebody asked me the other day about painting or selling a painting that they've done on one of my tutorials, that a friend of hers wanted to purchase it. You can give your tutorials away, but ethically you should not be giving away or selling work that is identical to the artist that taught it to you. That's unfair to the artist. You can steer them toward that artist if they want that particular painting, and see if that artist has the painting available to sell. But if it's a friend and they want your work, then what I would suggest is that you go online, get another picture of a Cairn, if this is what they're asking for, and say, okay, well, I can't sell you this one, but let me paint you a different one from a different photo, then I can sell it to you. And that's ethically how you would get around something like that. Now that I've taught you how to do rocks, and somebody says, oh, I want to have that rock painting, say, well, I can't give you this one, or I can't sell you this one, but I can sell you another one. Let me do it, and then I'll show it to you and see if you like it. And that's the way you would get around that. I appreciate the person asking me. That was very thoughtful of you. Of course, if you sold it to her, I would never know the difference. It's just an ethical thing that you don't step on other artists' toes by selling work that you've copied from their work. You know what I mean? Even if I am teaching it to you. You can give the stuff away, but making money off of another artist's work is not fair to do. It's not ethical to do. So anyway, that's it, you guys. So remember, be courageous, paint with wild abandon, and most of all, be kind to each other. Take care. Happy fall. It's so beautiful outside. Enjoy. God bless you. Bye-bye.